America, America, wake up, oh, can't you see? Those we elect do not protect our precious liberty. UN is un-American, unconstitutional, unfree. It brings the new world order to take freedom from you and me. There's no UN in American, there's no red in their white and blue to tell of all the bloodshed that bought freedom from me and you. America, America, it's up to you and me. Stand up and fight, take back our rights, we must keep America free.
America's judgments, what lies ahead? A lack of food, by design we believe. Enemy troops, which means the emergence of law enforcement and military together, both foreign and domestic. Military equipment, old style and new, both foreign and domestic. Biological chemical warfare that's been played on you and I, America, for at least the last 50 years. Now, why would someone or a group of people want to do that to their fellow Americans? Before we get into that, we're going to research those questions, in particular, why they would want to do that. Negative Population Growth Incorporated, out of Teaneck, New Jersey, has this to say: how can we put an end to mass starvation and suffering in this world? There is only one answer, and this is what they say the answer is. When you think about it, the only answer to human suffering on a frightful scale is drastic reduction in numbers of people. Logic says there can be no other solution. Let me go into the document a little further here. This is what they have to say their long-range goals are going to be. To sustain U.S. population at a smaller, more sustainable level, they require no more than 150 million for the United States. For the world, the total population, they want it to be not more than 2 billion people. Their interim steps to accomplish this, to create in the United States a new cabinet-level Department of Population. Going down here just a little bit. In its place, give a federal income tax credit only to those parents who have not more than 2 children. Anyone else would lose their tax credits entirely. Now, quoting from another organization, the Cobden Clubs, which U.S. Congressman Gephardt out of Missouri is part of. This is his phone number here till it got disconnected recently. Secretariat of the World, the pressing need, it says. The time is pressing. The Club of Rome was founded in 1968. Limits to Growth were written in 1971. Global 2000 was written in 79, but insufficient progress has been made in population reduction. They require the immediate reduction of world population. This must be done by whatever means necessary, they say. Compulsory cooperation is not debatable with 166 nations. Now, quoting from page 5, let me show you this. Therefore, the following policy must be implemented. The Secretary Council of the United Nations, led by the Anglo-Saxon major nation powers, will decree that henceforth the Security Council will inform all nations that its sufferance on population has ended, that all nations have quotas for reduction on a yearly basis, which will be enforced by the Secretary Council by selective or total embargo of credit, items of trade including food and medicine, or by military force when required. Paragraph B, the Secretary Council of the UN will inform all nations that outmoded notions of national sovereignty will be discarded and that the Secretary Council has complete legal, military, and economic jurisdiction in any region of the world, and that this will be enforced by major nations of the Security Council. Paragraph C, the Secretary Council of the UN will take possession of all natural resources, including the watersheds and great forests, to be used and preserved for the good of major nations of the Security Council. Paragraph D. The Security Council of the UN will explain that not all races and peoples are equal, nor should they be. Those races proven superior by superior achievements ought to rule the lesser races. And these treasonous jerks have the audacity to call me a racist? Everything that we've discovered about them is what they accuse us of being. That's the smokescreen to keep them from getting into the limelight. Paragraph E. All of the above constitute the New World Order, in which order all nations, regions, and races will cooperate with the decisions of the major nations of the Security Council. They talk about the action delayed could well be fatal. All could be lost if mere opposition to minor races is tolerated. They talk about an open declaration of intent followed by decisive force is the final solution. Where have we heard that before? This must be done before any shock hits our financial markets, tarnishes our credibility, and perhaps diminishes our force. Well, let's assist in diminishing their dirty force. So back to America's judgments. The subject that we're going to talk about first is the lack of food. The lack of food caused by whatever means that we can determine here. Back in 1982, the Reader's Digest had an article, Food, America's Secret Weapon. In a world where food is becoming as valuable as energy, the awesome abundance of American farms is finally being seen in its true light, as a source of power, a means to profit, and a weapon for peace. Well, it just so happens since the early 80s, the American farm is all but extinct, dropping up to 3,000 per week through foreclosures or whatever means possible to get them off to form this corporate America that we suffer from today. From the Tampa Tribune, January of last year, is an interesting comment. Grain shortage growing problem. Conditions indicate that there is at least some vulnerability in the food supply. From the Associated Press, Wichita, Kansas, Kansas harvest to hit a 30-year low. A record drought, temperature extremes, insects have hammered the Kansas wheat crop to what may be its smallest harvest since 1957. Now, Washington State has a problem with their seeds for the wheat. State banned Southwest wheat seed. This was in the Spokesman Review, May of '96. Action taken to safeguard Washington crop from fungus. Carnal bunt, a fungus that damages crops. The spores can live in the soil and on equipment and may be spread by wind. The disease is named after a city in India where the fungus was first discovered. As we go through this presentation, I'll show you where it really came from, right here in the USSA. One of the strangest springs ever, according to this farmer from North Carolina. Peach farmer Arthur Black says his harvest is down from 30 varieties to 2. Summer without peach pie, without cobbler or peach ice cream. Look, that's trivial stuff right now. For peach farmers all over the Southwest, the real problem will be a year without income. Everybody is hurt, and I mean bad hurt, says Wayne Mack, director of the marketing for the South Carolina Department of Agriculture. From the Western Producer, July of '96, the headlines read, the Ukraine harvest likely headed for disaster. Kiev, Ukraine. The Ukraine, once the breadbasket of Europe and producer of a quarter of the former Soviet Union's grain, faces a disastrous harvest this year. Now, I probably don't have to remind all of you that once upon a time in Ukraine, there was a giant shortage of food there by design. The videotape that we handled called Harvest of Despair, which was put together by the relatives of the survivors, says this. This film documents the Ukraine terror famine of 1932-33, which caused the deaths of 7 million people. The terror famine was deliberately created by the Soviet government as part of Stalin's decade-long effort to destroy the Ukraine peasantry who resisted the forced collectivization of their lands. Today we would call that corporate. Same difference in America. Now from the Wall Street Journal, January of '96, this is what it read in regards to food. Blueprint for managed food care. Controlling the food supply. From a person by the name of Lee Walsh, he writes an article called Weather Control. I'll just quote this caption here. To control weather is to control mankind, its health, life, behavior, and death. To control weather is to control the economy of any nation, the food chain, the water supply, the air we breathe, and all the natural resources that mankind needs for survival. Weather modification, 15 United States Code, Section 330. Public Law 92205, which is classified to this chapter as properly known as the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972. Also along with that we have the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1974, or 76 rather, which is 94-490. October 13th of 1976. Now, I was in the military. I was in the Naval Air Force, and I was part of the weather modification program out of Washington, D.C. back in the 60s, so I know it's real. Department of the Air Force, Phillips Laboratory, October 12th of 95. It was written to one of our associates in Montana. For his sake, I blocked his name out. This is in response to a newsletter that we had put out about weather modification. You asked if the information in the militiamen's newsletter article was true. It is true that the Department of Defense is developing a site near the village of Gracona. The site is for our HAARP, H-A-A-R-P program, which is a research project to better understand the ionosphere and impart its effects on communications. Yeah, well, let me tell you, that's a tiny part of it, folks. While there are some very superficial similarities between our research and Eastland's theories, the two projects are not related in any sense. Well, Eastland doesn't quite feel that way. He's been on A&E television talking about the patents that the Air Force is using of his. This is just one of them here. These are some of the other patents. This project has also been shown on many other television programs, including NBC's cable network, CNBC, on a program called Sightings. These patents go on that he feels is being infringed upon. Now, the funding for this, here's part of it right here. National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 95, Committee on the Armed Services, United States Senate. Going into the document, it'll show here the actual name, HAARP, High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. In this program, they talk about the promising results of the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. This transmitter in Alaska, besides providing a world-class research facility for ionospheric physics, could allow Earth-penetrating tomography over most of the northern hemisphere. Such a capability would permit the detection and precise location of tunnels, shelters, and other underground shelters. The absence of such a capability has been noted as a serious weakness in the Department of Defense plan for precision attacks on hardened targets. In the year 95, they were talking about $90 million to put it together, but the project has since mushroomed since then. They were talking about 160 towers back then. Now they're up to 350 towers, giant towers. Now, to prove my point even further, Popular Science has got an article in it of the same topic, September 95 issue. It's the secret agenda of a military project in Alaska. And going into the document a little bit, it's written by a man by the name of Farmer. This is page 81, the bottom left-hand paragraph. It says, differential heating of areas of the atmosphere could induce local weather conditions such as floods or droughts, useful to the military. How so? Smooth seas might suddenly be raked by tremendous or treacherous swells, creating or denying a tactical advantage. Now, when you come up to the location, the base in Gracona, Alaska, which was intended to be an over-the-horizon base but never materialized, so they either had to do something with it or give it back to the state. The reason they placed it there is for two basic reasons that I understand. One is the magnetic lines of the Earth line up perfectly there, and the other is the unlimited supply of natural gas for their power plants to generate this energy. HAARP Research Station, Gracona, Alaska. And this is a picture of their towers. They're all roughly 72 feet tall. This is a man standing at the base of it, a trailer equivalent to the size of a semi. But they're just all over the space, all over the place, arrayed in funny patterns. Now, according to this document, Center for Aerospace Doctrine, Research, and Education, produced in 1982, but printed for release in 1986. Low-intensity conflict and modern technology. Lieutenant Colonel David J. Dean, U.S. Air Force editor. This is to disrupt human thinking and debilitate military troops is the intent of this book, which we believe leads into the HAARP program, the HAARP operations that the military is not telling us. But the curious thing in this is the foreword is written by Congressman Newt Gingrich, so obviously our Congress knows about it. Now, some of the things that we're noticing around communities, especially when we were in California here a few months ago, is the strange cloud formations that seem to grow from military aircraft having passed over the area. Now, this is an aircraft that just flew in this funny loop formation here, and another one you can see going across here. But after that's been in the sky for a while, the sky becomes full of clouds from what we believe is this military fuel that's being burned. And shortly after that, according to certain doctors that we communicate with as late as today, their patients become very ill and don't show up for their appointments right after the planes have passed over. Now, these are talking papers on what we're talking about, the military fuel, JP8-100, which is a new fuel that's used in the F-22s, F-16s, etc. You got to wonder why these aircraft are crashing so frequently. This could be one of the reasons, because this fuel allows water to go right through the filters, hence the potential for crash. So our pilots in the military, I mean, there are sons and daughters. We ought to be concerned about them too, and how they suffer along with the civilian population. Now, here's another article that can be causing our sickness. With overwhelming results, these research we've done this last year has indicated lung infections all over the country at an alarming rate. It doesn't matter where you're from, and I believe that JP8-100 is part of it. But I think another thing that showed up in our local Missoulian newspaper is MTBE, an additive to the fuel of automobiles to stop pollution, etc., I think is doing its damage. This is a testimony of several witnesses that had to either move out of the area or have temporarily moved during the wintertime because of the poisons in the air from this fuel that's being burned. And people are saying it's literally devastated my life. Going on with the weather modification, this is a picture of a fluorescent cloud. Without the sun anywhere near it, it's lighting up like it's plugged into something. We have video footage that shows an untold amount of strange cloud formations, even to the picture of a man coming at you in the clouds. Is that the rapture we're talking about? Out of Arizona, I believe it is, Scottsdale, Arizona, it shows a cover of a newspaper there with a strange lightning storm. Now, I grew up in Tornado Alley in northern Minnesota, and I got to see a lot of strange storms, but I've never seen anything like what I've seen the last few years, with a dozen bolts of lightning coming out of a cloud at a time. It's just very unnatural. And clouds that are mobile or portable, actual hollow clouds, this was taken by people in South Dakota, and as they watched and were taking these pictures, in horror they saw 3 gunships come out of this portable cloud. Silent gunships came right at them out of the cloud, then disappeared back in the cloud, and the cloud moved on. What do we have to look forward to, folks? If you want more information on that, there's a book available from some very special people in Alaska that have been keeping track of the HARP program. Angels Don't Play This HARP. It's by Nick Begich. Shifting gears just a little bit, I want to share what the land grabbers, that's what we call the global people, is the global grabbers, land grabbers, have been doing through the Bureau of Land Management. This is in our newsletter, Taking Aim. The BLM rules threaten Americans' freedom. Let me just skip around here a little bit. Now, this program came out about 3 years ago in the Federal Register, sponsored by the Forest Service. At the time, it was at page number 5,800. Now it's at 57,600. What's in between those two sets? That's almost 50,000 pages of more bureaucracy. See, the way they accomplish this is to hide it in the Federal Register, hoping that there won't be any public outcry from it, and after 60 days it becomes law, so they say. Anyhow, the pages numbered listed are the Federal Register. 57605, criminal penalties regarding federal resources are expanded from $1,000 and 12 months in prison to $500,000 and 5 years in prison. They talk about the BLM. Law enforcement authorities expanded beyond activities occurring on BLM land. Under this language, activities on private land adjacent to and upstream from BLM lands fall under BLM law enforcement authority. The definition of pollute or contaminate water means to discharge or place in water other things, among other things, rock, sand, cellar dirt, or agricultural waste. So if your child picks up a rock and skips it on the water, you're probably going to go to jail. Going on with the same document, on page 57,612, we find this: the definition of primitive area no longer has to be roadless. How can it be called a primitive area then? They apparently don't care. Obviously, we can see through the smoke screen it's a land-grabbing mechanism. Going on, unless authorized by the BLM, you cannot discharge a firearm. How do you protect yourself against the bear that's coming at you, or a cougar? going down to near the bottom of the page here. You cannot operate a vehicle in any manner causing or likely to cause a disturbance to the soil, water, wildlife, or wildlife habitat. In other words, if your car is sitting there idling and you turn the steering wheel back and forth, you've disturbed the soil because it rearranges the soil. Going back up to the top of the page here in the center, without BLM authorization, you cannot deface, remove, or destroy natural features or resources, including plants or their parts, soil, rocks, or minerals. The last one I'll talk about here. Without BLM authorization, you cannot divert, transport, or remove any water resources owned by or reserved to the United States and administered by the BLM. So if you get thirsty when you're on BLM property and need to take a drink of water, you better stay there till you leave it. Now, Executive Order 12919 makes the point very clear. This is where Clinton bypasses Congress through his martial law rule. Executive Order 12919 was signed into law May 1994. On page 11, paragraph M, it says this. Now, he's given all of the authority possible to FEMA, or Federal Emergency Management Agency, to regulate you and I. Water resources means all usable water from all sources within the jurisdiction of the United States, which can be managed, controlled, or allocated to meet emergency requirements. You can't go very far without water, can you, folks? It's very essential to life. This is what the BLM now says. Secretary Babbitt directs the BLM to halt action, go back to the drawing board with law enforcement regulations. The people win round one at the BLM. That's great. Now, San Francisco has had a problem for quite a number of years. It's called the Estuary Project. There was an MD by the name of F.H. Ernst from Vallejo, I'm not sure how you say that, California. Vallejo, thank you very much. On 10/20/92, and this is what he has to say. An EPA master plan to put California on permanent water rationing, to break all water rights or contracts in Central Valley watershed, to place the delta levees at major risk, return the delta to swamp status. Do you recall in 1997 what happened? The levees failed, didn't they? They couldn't repair them. They couldn't keep the gophers from digging holes in them, so the water washed them away. And now because of these laws, they cannot repair them. So guess who's going to starve? That's where most of our winter crops come from, isn't it? Now that land is returned back to the wetlands because water will stand within 18 inches of the top of the soil for a certain period of time. Now to prove my point a little further on control of our private land, this is what comes out with the tax papers in Montana now to the property tax owners. How does your property fit in? It's part of an ecosystem. This is from New York State, from Delaware County Times. It says this: to halt the biosphere plan, the attack comes from all directions. Just when it seems one siege has been beaten back, up comes another from an unknown flank. This is from Delaware County Board Chairman Raymond M. Christensen. But it doesn't end there, folks. This is what the sign looks like at Glacier National Park right now. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. Glacier National Park is recognized as part of the International Network of Biosphere Reserves. That's in northern Montana. This is on the East Coast. Great Smoky Mountain National Park, an International Biosphere Reserve. That was taken in 1994. Now this one is Mount Mitchell State Park, North Carolina, United Nations Biosphere Reserve. U.S. Congressman Tom Colburn, Congress of the United States, House of Representatives, October 16th, 1996. I'll quote from this paragraph here. Currently, 68% of our national parks, preserves, and monuments are designated as United Nations World Heritage Sites. Biosphere reserves are both. Currently, there are 47 biosphere reserves in the United States, which in total cover an area about the size of Colorado, our fourth largest state. Furthermore, over $700,000 of your tax dollars were used to fund the biosphere program last year. All of this without approval from Congress. Who are these clowns? Now that's not enough. Here's a sketch of the Northwest. The plan to protect biodiversity. Now we live in this blackened out area in northwest Montana right here. And this is what it says about the color code of this map. The core reserves, no use whatsoever. That means crisis relocation. They're, by design, crises are relocation, like Cambodia, I suppose. The corridors, extremely limited use. That's the darker gray areas. And the lighter gray areas are the buffer zones, very limited use. It just so happens that the white areas where human habitation is still allowed has very little or no water in it. Senator Burns also has something to say about that. He calls UNESCO intrusive. While I understand the extent of American treaty commitments to the United Nations, I do not believe these commitments were intended to allow any international body to undercut our domestic policy. Surprise, surprise, Mr. Burns. The concept of creating buffer zones to expand the borders of our national parks sets a dangerous precedence. Now, President Clinton has made sure that his cronies that grabbed that $1 trillion worth of coal in the state of Utah are protected. Through this executive order 12986, January 18th of 96, he did this. International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Me as president, I hereby extend to the International Union for Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources the privileges and immunities that provide or pertain to immunity from suit. How do you think the people of Utah feel about that? The global grabbers. This is a picture of an underground facility manned by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, in Springfield, Missouri, one of 50-some of these across the country. This is the tree line, or the ground line above. This is the hood of a semi. The passenger took the picture. There's a semi coming at you in the center of that picture, out of a tunnel, by the way. As you get into the tunnel further, there's another semi coming at them. The traffic was heavy that day, and there's one that just crossed their path in another tunnel. This is one of many across America. We got this from a private trucker out of North Dakota that realized something strange was going on here when it was, his hauling was done by UN codes, by the way. Now, this is a food mill, a rice mill in Texas, to be specific. It's Lindsay Mill in northwest Harris County, Texas. Up until late last year, they had no fences at all. Now they have an 8-foot cyclone fence with razor military wire around it. What's wrong with this picture? What's going on here? So you've got to wonder, when a person by the name of Catherine Brittany, the executive director of the United Nations World Food Program, makes this statement. Food is power. We use it to change behavior. Some may call that bribery. We do not apologize. I find it extremely sick and repugnant. So my suggestion to you folks is to start putting your food away now. Thank you very much.
When your wife and kids are happy, blessed with 3 square meals a day, your home is warm and cozy, and you earn a living wage. When your health is all it should be, and your water's safe to drink, don't take these things for granted. It's later than you think. Everybody has an appetite, their favorite kind of greed. Some men have a craving for much more than they need. America, you're watching history repeat itself. Read the story about the Romans in the Bible on the shelf. Old Glory was waving Over Waco's compound, you could see evil spirits as they circle around. ATF said to Reno, you planned this so well, give us the order and we'll blow to hell. Janet smiled proudly as she faced her first test. She bragged Clinton chose her because she was the best. She gave the order, the tanks showed no grace, punching holes in the buildings for their deadly spray. Who will tell the little children their government was wrong? The Republic of Texas should have cared for her own. There was no justice, the law had been used, their weapons were legal, there was no child abuse.
America's Judgment, Part 2. Enemy troops, both foreign and domestic, law enforcement and military merged together. Now you'll have to remember that the enemy troops that came to Waco and destroyed those innocent families did not come from a foreign country. They were, for the most part, our fellow Americans. And the proof lies in the equipment that was there also. This is our U.S. military equipment on the soil adjacent to the Branch Davidians' home. But it didn't just start there. It didn't just start in northern Idaho. It started a long time ago, and we'll go into that now. The New Times, Volume 7, Number 13, November 19th, 1975, says this: more than just a game, the Cable Splicer Papers by Ron Rittenauer. The introductory remarks, I'll share a few of them here. What are the Cable Splicer Papers? A collection of until now secret California National Guard documents that outline an elaborate mechanism to quell domestic dissidents by means that include the imposition of martial law. Now we'll skip over, if I can find my pen here, we'll skip over to the top of this column. Over 4,000 military, police, and select civil servants have been trained as instructors in this course. The course also emphasizes the collection of political intelligence, includes instructions on manipulating the press and thereby public opinion. How come that doesn't surprise me? Description of the papers. I'll skip down to here. A massive secret paper directly connected to the Army's Garden Plot Master Plan for Civil Disturbance Control, of which Cable Splicer is only one subplan awash in the depths of the nation's bureaucracy. A few of the code names other than Cable Splicer have been discovered, such things as Rancher 3, Orbit West, Orbit Red, Upland Victor, Upland 567, Steep Hill, Graham Metric, Quiet Town, Cabin Cruiser, Lantern Spike, and Cab Fare. All states, according to Colonel Zane Cordum, Deputy Director of the Directorate of Military Support, or DOMS, were encouraged to use the Cable Splicer technique for training purposes. The encourager of DOMS that they used is called money. Cable Splicer 1 was conducted in California, May of 1968, barely a month after the Army's task group became the Directorate. Cable Splicer 2 was a bigger affair. It began in February 10 of 1969 with the Governor's Orientation Conference and the kickoff for a series of joint military police training sessions across the state of California. This occurred under Governor Reagan before he became president. Cable Splicer 3 happened in May of 1970. Every National Guard headquarters now has an Emergency Operations Center. Each EOC boasts a full-time staff using multiple lines of communication to the Pentagon's Domestic War Room. I didn't know we had one. With access to the computerized intelligence systems. The Cable Splicer 3 conference met just 3 weeks after National Guard troops shot and killed students at Kent State and Jackson State. How the Army brought the war home. The master police military joint planning and operations cannot be called a plot or be dismissed as merely the ravaging or ravings of a few coup d'etat crazed colonels and their flipped-out Minutemen supporters. It is far too massive, involving far too many people in far too many official positions. Its implementation has been and remains far too much a matter of official policy, secret official policy. Cable splicer seeds produced military police training specializing in political indoctrination, SWAT training, and the development of a corps of police and military officers with common doctrines, experiences, and intimate knowledge of each other's organizations, and one very special skill, the imposition of martial law. After we'd done our last videotape called Enemies Foreign and Domestic, we had received a letter from a man in the other side of Washington State on the West Coast. He said he was a motor pool driver for the Army when he was in Germany, and he related a number of things to me, and I got him to put it in writing with the okay that I could use it to the public. This is one of the trips that he was sharing with me as he drove an officer, and I'll start out right here on page 4. If I could keep my mouth shut, he would like to take me into the meeting with him and then ask my opinions and views afterwards. I told him I would be very honored and promised my oath of silence. He said if I didn't follow his instructions to the letter, we would both go to the stockade and he would have me done away with. The guard to our left looked hard at me. The officer said simply, "My driver is to stay with me." Both guards saluted. As the door opened, the officer, without saying a word, who was behind me and to my right, put his hand on my right shoulder and pushed me to the left side of the door against the wall. He continued on into the large room that was dark except for the far wall that was covered by a large lighted detailed map of the 7 major land masses of our planet. In the light from the far wall, I could see the room was filled with brass, lots of big brass, officers. I became apprehensive. The officer disappeared in the crowd. The speaker at the far wall began his presentation. No one else in the room spoke. The speaker began to describe each landmass, starting with Europe. He described political, social, civil, economic, industrial, human, and other concerns of each landmass and region as it related to the taking over and control of each area. As he moved to each new landmass, I became aware that he was describing the complete taking over of this countries to be overseen by one agency. I didn't understand how this could be done or how one group would get it past the people. I couldn't understand how any one of you would accept this. For me, it meant that we were going to have horrific worldwide population genocide and reduction, termination, murder of anyone who resists. The speaker then said in one of his statements that groups or individuals who resisted would be openly executed. The speaker then demonstrated how control techniques would be developed by subduing the smaller countries first, then moving to the larger ones. I thought maybe I was seeing some sick mock battle plan when the speaker at one point said the United States would be the last to be taken over, and then by one step at a time, so as to allay suspicions or minimize and control any reactions to the imposed control before the program was completed. As the speaker began to conclude his presentation, before the lights came on, my officer appeared in front of me and ushered me out the door into the bright light of the hallway without a word. I was mentally numb. The year was 1964. Now, quoting from Special Warfare, Professional Bulletin of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center, it's the April 95 issue, Volume 8, Number 2. On page 3 and 4, we find this. In 1878, Colonel Lewis Merrill, a West Point graduate of 1855, deployed part of his unit in 12-man detachments. Their mission to chase and destroy armed terrorists or rebels. They used local law enforcement. Who knew the area of operation. This military action destroyed civilian organizations which were labeled as terrorists. This occurred in South Carolina. Now, this is a military training manual for officers. It's about 1.25 inches thick. It's from Norwich University. Peacemaking, Peacekeeping, and Coalition Warfare, the Future Role of the United Nations. Going inside the cover, we find this. It's a 1994 issue, National Defense University, Fort Leslie J. McNair, Washington, D.C. On page 131, I'd like to share this with you. The military preoccupation with target destruction rather than target arraignment presents a serious obstacle in their conversion to law enforcers. Now, this is our military we're talking about, or what we thought was our military. From the Navy Times, the Marine Corps edition, we find this: going downtown, the Marines learned the art of urban patrolling. From another document, it says tactical tracking operations for police, military, and corrections special response teams. Going into the document, we find this: the material is classified not for public disclosure. Oops. It says the hunt for illegal survivalist or militia groups. The special topics addressed in this module: observation and surveillance, long-range patrolling, pursuit or sting operations, search and rescue, right-wing survivalist and militia movements. They really believe the lies that the media has been telling them, don't they? It's too bad they don't do their own investigation. This is the emergence of the militaries of the world together. Soviet general officers at National Defense University as guests of the Secretary of Defense with their red bands and all. Now, our troops and the Soviets are rubbing shoulders even more so here. The caption under the picture says, "The combined American-Russian quick reaction force boards a Russian Mi-8 helicopter before a mission." It shows it flying over what appears to be a barricaded area. An Mi-8 circles a checkpoint threatened by a crowd of belligerents. Gee, I wonder if I'm in that picture. In this picture, it shows U.S. General Nash rubbing shoulders with a Russian general by the name of Yevgensky, which is a KGB Spetsnaz specialist, which would be equivalent to the assassination teams that roamed foreign countries from America, called the Phoenix Project. Now, from the Commercial Appeal, Memphis, Tennessee, March of last year, about a year ago, we find this: up in the sky, it's no attack, it's the Marines. Quoting from this paragraph here, I know it's very difficult to read, but the exercise gives the high-tech 24th Marine Expeditionary Unit practice in navigating city skies and maneuvering above city buildings with infrared sensors, night vision goggles, and electronic surveillance. Marine Expeditionary Units have trained in cities such as Atlanta, Los Angeles, Miami, and San Francisco, and I might add so many more. Let me show you one of the so many more that's been lied to here. This was in the news just recently. The Charlotte Observer, Thursday, March 6, 1997. The invasion of the 3rd Ward, about 100, and they're lying about that too, 100 Army Special Operations troops descended on Uptown for a secret drill. 12 helicopters, including Special Blackhawks, swooped in Tuesday evening. Charlotte residents, rattled by hovering helicopters and noise that sounded like explosions, flooded police and city officers with complaints. Another Uptown training exercise scheduled for Wednesday night was canceled. And now the mayor of the city is in big trouble. He didn't tell anybody. It was his private little secret. So you got to ask, folks, what are your public servants doing behind your back? The Army misled Charlotte on a scope of drill, officials say. The mayor, Mayor Pat McCrory, said the Army misled him about the scope and drill when officers met with him in December. Now, this is March, so that's 4 months later. Other city officials said they knew nothing at all. Why did he keep them in the dark? What else is going on behind our backs? Now, this is quoting again from that John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Bulletin. To learn from the past, we must anticipate the future. And the future will be dominated by a single overwhelming presence, the United Nations. Now, what happens when local law enforcement come to raid a family? They usually bring overwhelming force, so the family or whoever they're raiding has no thoughts of even trying to defend themselves. Now, that's basically what it's saying here. Now, that, from the standpoint of safety or not getting bullets flying back at them, is a good plan. However, that's what's being used here. The future will be dominated by a single overwhelming presence, the United Nations. Now, this is from a newsletter called The Resistor. It's the official publication of the Special Forces Underground. This is way back in the autumn of '94. The New World Order Combat Arms Survey, question number 46. I would fire upon U.S. citizens. This is what they have to say. Now that was a genuine military questionnaire that started in at least 1987 that we're aware of in Germany. The resistor has been eliciting responses to the questionnaire for the past year. Frighteningly, among service members with less than 10 years of service, 63% agree or strongly agree with question 46. I would fire upon U.S. citizens who refuse or resist confiscation of firearms banned by the U.S. government. Among new recruits, almost 90% give the response, if it's the law and they order me to do so, I guess it's okay. Our federally controlled public schools have done their job. Of those with more than 15 years of service, 87% replied disagree or strongly disagree. Response by members of Special Forces Underground were unprintable. Basically, there will not be many officers who give that order more than once. Let's hope we can count on them for that. Now, this is what the questionnaire looks like. This is questions 32 through 46. Every single one of the questions from at least this point, from 32 through 46, have United Nations in them under some format to find out where our troops' hearts really are. Are they with the U.S. sovereignty or are they with the global grabbers? And from that point on, they're screened and put in various positions. Now, this is from Fort Lewis, Washington, just this last fall. It's a Humvee, which is a military vehicle, unless the civilians have $70,000 to pay for them. The curious thing about this one is it's white in color. It says UN on the side, and it says military police down below that. This is just last fall in Tacoma, Washington area at Fort Lewis. Now, we were ever so happy when we discovered that our troops would not be under the UN in the operation over there in Bosnia, until we realized that the NATO operation is under UN. According to Americans for America Incorporated, in April 4th of 1949, NATO, which means the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, was signed with member groups agreeing that the treaty should be within the framework of the United Nations. The NATO treaty document refers specifically to the UN in the preamble. The parties to this treaty reaffirm their faith in the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. So Warsaw is part of the pact, the UN is, or the NATO is part of the pact. It's all a happy little peacekeeping force today. Now, this is from Handgun Control Incorporated. It says confidential, so we'll be sure to share it. The notes and minutes for meetings of Friday, December 17th, 93, a rough draft proposal for internal memo and 5-year plan. Distribution, wow, why didn't we know that? The White House. Let me show you what they were up to way back then. This is on page 9. The total elimination of arms from society. We cannot survive into the 21st century unless we remember the need to expand our wave to new thinking, to the total disarmament of America. With much of the public disarmed, we can become more like Great Britain. The difference this time will be blue coats instead of red coats, I suppose. When we can also eliminate the need for much of our police to be armed. How are they going to feel to be bobbies like Great Britain and get beat up by children? This would take a long time. However, a concentrated public relations campaign can pressure local law enforcement to give up their arms when the time comes. What happens to the pressure from our side? Are we putting pressure on to put America back together or let the grabbers get it all? This is from the Department of Treasury, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Washington, D.C. An open letter to all state and local law enforcement officials. The purpose of this letter is to provide information to all state and local law enforcement agencies regarding one specific aspect of the recently enacted Omnibus Consolidated Appropriations Act of '97. To make it unlawful for any person convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, I said misdemeanor, to ship, transport, or possess or receive firearms or ammunition. It also makes it unlawful for any person to sell or otherwise dispose of a firearm or ammunition to any person knowing or having reasonable cause to believe that the recipient has been convicted of such a misdemeanor. That's quite open. How do we determine that? This new prohibition does apply to all law enforcement officers. So what will it be next time? Instead of misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, will it be a parking ticket? Failure to yield right away? Where will they draw the line on us this time? And it's signed by John W. McGraw, the director of the BATF. But we've done such a good job this year of getting new politicians in there to do a job for we the people finally, They're coming out with new bills already in 1997. The Handgun Registration Act of 97. The 105th Congress, first session, H.R. 186, January 7th of 97. Short title, this act may be cited as the Handgun Registration Act of 97. Federal handgun registration system to apply in all states not establishing state handgun regulation system that meets certain requirements. There they go, stepping on the 9th and 10th Amendments again that they swore an oath to uphold, these global grabbers. Going into the document a little further, we find this, a definition of serious violation. Multiple unregistered handguns. The violation consists of the violator possessing, owning, or controlling 2 or more unregistered handguns. Boy, am I in trouble. B, unregistered handgun is of higher caliber. The caliber of any handgun which is the subject of the violation is greater than 22. What do they call a 45? A cannon? Yeah. But the penalties are not very severe here, folks, not to worry. Whoever knowingly violates subsection A will be fined not more than $250,000 or imprisoned not less than 15 years or both. The court shall not suspend a sentence of imprisonment imposed for an offense under this section and shall not impose a probationary sentence for any offense under this section. Now they're dictating to the courts also. So what's it all about? Firearms. Certain firearms are now prohibited in Victoria. During this amnesty, July 2, 96 to September 30 of 97, compensation will be paid for semi-automatic, center fire and rim fire rifles, semi-automatic and pump-action shotguns. Surrender and compensation. As a result of the Australian Police Minister Council meeting on May 10th of 96, the Victorian government will proclaim new firearm regulations October 1 of 96. Let me just show you some of the guns on the list. This is page 1 of 16 pages of gun grabbing. It says the type and then the price they're paying for the used or new. An AK-47 old copy used, they're paying $1,485. New, $1,800. Maybe we ought to haul some of our scrap iron over to Australia so we can buy the firearms here. FNFAL 308, $2,490 used. They don't even show a new price. M1 Garand 308, $1,750. A Ruger Mini 14 Ranch Rifle, $750 used, $975 new. They want them pretty bad, don't they? But this hasn't just started. This is 1994, H.R. 5904. Bear in mind, however foreign countries go is how America goes. 5 years ago, they registered the firearms in Canada, including the Barrett Light 50s. Today, they're chopping them up. 1994, H.R. 5904, an act to make unlawful the possession of sniper weapons, sponsored, of course, by Mr. Schumer and 50 of his cronies. This act may be cited as the Sniper Prevention and Firearms Collection Act. It shall be unlawful for a person to manufacture, transfer, or possess a sniper class weapon. What does that mean? The definition of a sniper class weapon is this. Defined herein as any single-shot bolt-action rifle of greater caliber than .22. Further defined as any firearm or type replicas or duplicates of the firearms known as Ruger, Winchester, Remington, Marlin, H&H, Ithaca, Weatherby, or other current bolt-action long guns greater than .22 caliber. Any long gun with a barrel length greater than 15 inches. Well, it'd get me twice on some of mine. Any weapon deemed by law enforcement to be a viable sniper weapon. What's that, a slingshot? And the penalties. A person who knowingly violates Section 1018 and 1024 shall be fined not more than $25,000 and imprisoned not more than 18 years or both. Now, shifting gears just a little bit here, this is from John F. Kennedy Special Warfare again. 5th Special Forces must exploit the emerging technology of non-lethal weaponry, including lasers, microwaves, sound waves, light waves, electromagnetic impulses, microbes, chemical, and even computer viruses. Well, there was a helicopter shot down. We thought it was shot down, but it wasn't. The crew that was in it was fried, burned. There was no fire inside. Their hair was still the same color. Their flight suits were not burned at all, yet when they crashed, their bodies had giant gashes in them with no blood. We believe this was microwave done to a president's helicopter as an experiment. We hear that they've moved this experimental field out to Bend, Oregon now from the Washington, D.C. area. Anyhow, going into a national defense news magazine way back in October of '93, I would like to share a few things here. On page 25, non-lethal devices slice across the science spectrum. Emerging devices offer alternatives to death-dealing weapon systems. A range of non-lethal anti-personnel devices that possess applications for law enforcement, special operations forces, and larger tactical campaigns are being exploited by U.S. military. Non-lethal systems also are being aimed at disabling sensor systems, communications, computers, air, sea, and ground vehicles, and enemy weapons. Non-lethal technology are receiving increasing scrutiny by Department of Defense, federal and local law enforcement agencies, and industry providers. These weapons, possessing both defensive and offensive capabilities, are expanded to profoundly alter the conduct of conventional conflicts. Among these emerging weapons are devices that incapacitate enemy forces or hostile personnel by temporarily blinding, it's not temporary folks, disorientating, making them violently ill, or putting them instantly to sleep. Infrasound devices, very low sound generators, are capable of causing disorientation, vomiting, and spastic bowel contractions. Adjusted to a more intense signal, infrasound is capable of disintegrating concrete. Well, if they can do that to concrete, what can they do to we the people? Now, a half a dozen years ago, they were called non-lethal weapons, cutting cars in half, melting man and his weapon together. This was in an operation called Just Cause in Panama, where 26,000 of our finest raided innocent civilians, unarmed civilians I may add, at midnight, December 19th, 1989, killing up to 4,000 of them, 2,504 according to the UN. Burning their homes block after block and burying them in common graves, at least 15 common graves. All of this done under Southern Command. We believe to open the door for even more drug runs to come up from South America. We believe that after Noriega was taken out of there, that the drug running doubled since his removal. Several months afterwards, it was more than double when he was there. So our military personnel, I would assume for the most part, don't know, but there are those in power that certainly do know. Thank you, folks.
They're still in your country, take it back. Politicians are corrupt, that's a fact. They gave you socialism when they stole your Constitution. Before they steal your guns, take it back. They're still in your country, take it back. Federal government is your enemy, that's a fact. They sold you down the river when they stole your gold and silver. Before they steal your guns, take it back. They're still in your country, take it back.
Not the winds of freedom that blew down the Berlin Wall. or rearranged the Soviet Union on TV to fool us all. It was the spirits of Marx and Lenin answering socialism's call for a one-world fascist government to enslave us one and all. America's being dismantled right before your very eyes by the president and Congress, covered up by network lies, while the district of criminals answers Federal Reserve's cries to destroy the Constitution with unlawful treaty ties. They have trained a Gestapo known as FEMA to everyone. Wolves in black sheep clothing, Nazi terror has begun. Black helicopters in the sky, white UN tanks are here. The New World Order is standing by, lock and load, the time is near.
America's Judgment, What Lies Ahead, Part 3, Military Equipment, both old and new, foreign and domestic. You know, there's a lot of old-timers that are wondering why in the world on highways and on railroads we have more military equipment en route someplace today in the 1990s than we did in the 40s during the war. What's the reason for this? The Berlin Wall fell at the push of a little finger from the other side, I might add. There's no Cold War anymore. What's the big deal? How come we have to have so much military equipment activities today? What's going on, folks? This document here says the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. What a lullaby, let me tell you. Freedom from War. This document is Department of State Publication 7277, Disarmament Series 5. Gee, that must mean there was at least 4 before that, doesn't it? Released September of 1961, Office of Public Service, Bureau of Public Affairs. Going into the document, we find this under Summary, Disarmament Goal and Objectives. General and complete disarmament in accordance with the principles of the United Nations, the disbanding of all national armed forces, and the prohibition of their reestablishment like in no more, in any form whatsoever other than those required to preserve internal order or for contributions to the United Nations Peace Force. I think they're spelling the word peace wrong. They're piecing America apart here. The third stage, they call it a program, not a plan. A program means it's well orchestrated, well funded, and well manned, which is what it is. The manpower for United Nations Peace Force. But this is the paragraph I want to concentrate on. The manufacture of armaments would be prohibited except for those of agreed types and quantities to be used by the United Nations Peace Force and those required to maintain internal order. All other armaments would be destroyed or converted to peaceful purposes. Let me show you how peaceful these purposes are. Make reefs, not war. Army carriers retired to sea. Equipment converted into Gulf artificial reefs. The next one I want to show you is a Sheridan 551 tank in perfect running order, being dumped in the ocean also, off the Virginia coast. But this one here is, of all of them, is the one that hurts me the most. This is one of 3,000 M60 tanks which were built as late as 1989, much newer than the vehicle I just drove in on. You know, I thought we had a shortage of natural resources. Why then are we dropping our natural resources in the ocean for items the fish wouldn't even appreciate? Why don't they drop my vehicle in there instead if they need a habitat? They could probably make a dozen of my vehicle out of one of these tanks. No, I think it's because they're worried about who might get at control of these tanks while they bring the foreign tanks in. This is a Soviet T-72 tank hidden in a warehouse that one of our people discovered, so we had to blank his face out here in the Seattle, Washington area. It's a T-72 main battle tank. But then, of course, we have the Department of Defense detractors here that work for them, called Soldier of Fortune, in their April 1997 issue, making fun of people like you and I, with an article on page 44 that says, "The Russians are coming, the Russians are coming. Soviet tanks in America's heartland stir paranoia." The guy's name should be Shallow because he's a very shallow thinker to come up with a thought process like this. The equipment that we find is just one of many problems. He needs to put the rest of his puzzle back together. Also, we're finding trucks in private warehouses hidden away that have strange writings on the bumper that I have a tough time interpreting. I have a tough enough time with English, much less a foreign language like that. In addition to that, we have, of course, the old Saucier, Mississippi plague here, where the Soviet vehicles from the East German bloc was arriving in our country. They said they brought them here to paint them and then ship them back overseas again. Now, I thought it'd be cheaper to send a can of paint overseas, and the expertise, if they can't figure out how to paint, then it would be to send the whole truck here. Now, these vehicles, I want you to know, have a little different design on the roof. It's angled windows for looking up as well as out. These are called reconnaissance units. Now, these reconnaissance units, some of them are being painted from UN or Soviet green to UN white at Airmar Resources, for just for one. But other areas around the country also are receiving these units and taking the boxes off and putting other things on them, like New Way Sanitation Manufacturing Incorporated in Waterloo, Iowa, are putting various boxes on them. So you can't argue about all of it. But when we see hordes and hordes of them being reproduced in this fashion with these reconnaissance boxes on them, we have a grave concern. I mean, if it was one or two, it'd be all right, but how come they're not leaving our country, and why are they being painted white? Now, this is what the inside of one of those reconnaissance command centers, mobile command centers, look like, with all their wares right inside the units. Now, they say that they brought them here for painting. Why then does this bill of lading that a birdie got off of one of the windshields and over the fence and into our hands say reserved for the UN on it? It doesn't add up, does it? What's going on here? Now, in Salem, Oregon, according to the Statesman Journal, March a year ago, it shows the local law enforcement being trained on military vehicles, LAVs to be specific, light armored vehicles, vehicles built for all-terrain and drug raids, which is a whole other subject, the forced drug raids on America to bring us down to our knees. Now, this is High Point, North Carolina Police Department. Peacekeeper hits the streets. This is from the U.S. Air Force, donated to the police department. Notice the giant key in the front of the vehicle to turn your door latch so they can come in. Actually, what it does is romp on through there and pull a lever and pull your whole wall back out so they can walk right in. And now the Air Force is replacing those that they're giving away with these right here, at least in certain parts of the country. Looks just like Germany or Russia, doesn't it? And here's the new squad car in Erie County, New York, for the Sheriff's Department. It says Sheriff SWAT on it. Looks just like Germany or Russia too, doesn't it, with the battering ram on the front. What on earth is going on in America? That's why I call it the USSA. Now, this is a mobile rocket, Frog rocket from Russia, with love, no doubt. It still has the red star on it, which is barely legible, on a mobile launcher on a flatbed on a highway going north out of Shreveport, Louisiana. This is one of many, many, many bushel baskets of pictures we have of these items. Now, this is a picture of the Humvees gathered in a circular fashion, just like the wagon trains of the Old West. But these are white, and they say UN on them. And inside of that circle of Humvees, military Humvees, are larger military trucks, also white. This is at Fort Polk, Louisiana, right now. And in Alamogordo, New Mexico, this is the sign on the Holloman Air Force Base right now today, most of which I cannot read because it's in German. The caption below says, Alamogordo Chamber of Commerce and City Promotion Board. They're promoting the sales of our base, the use of our bases in America by foreigners now, today, which the East Germans are occupying quite well. Now, in an article titled, Can the U.S. Really Win the Next War? This is out of USA Today, Wednesday, December 18th of this last year, page 13A. I would like to share a couple of things with you here on this. In specific, this paragraph right here, which I've enlarged so you can see it a little better. Remember the tremendous victory in Desert Storm. If we had to fight that war again, it is doubtful we could succeed. Such a conflict would exhaust all of the Army's 10 active divisions. If we had to match the forces we sent to this Desert Storm, says Lieutenant General Paul Funk, Commanding General of the Army's 2nd Corps in Fort Hood, Texas, we wouldn't have anything left in this country. The same could be said of air power, which proved so decisive. Last paragraph. Who knows if we will face Saddam again in the field of battle? But here are 5 fictional scenarios we developed which could be the next war. with our president having very difficult options. Each represents the varied sort of war we might have to fight in regions around the world. Be forewarned, these are not all conflicts we would necessarily win. The first that they talk about is North Korea in 98. The next is the Persian Gulf in 99. Then in 2003 they go on to Mexico City, Tokyo, and Moscow. But one thing that they forgot to talk about is China, the Great Red Dragon, which I believe is in prophecy from many sources. Chinese to lease Long Beach base. Clinton pushes for agreement, according to the Associated Press out of the Hanford Sentinel, March 9th of 1997. It says this, turned over to foreign shipping company with a recent checkered history and a direct connection with U.S., in direct competition with U.S. shipping. What they mean by a checkered history is this is the operation that brought hundreds of thousands of AK-47s to put in the hands of less than honorable people in the gangs of Los Angeles and other parts of the country. They were caught at it, Clinton's buddies. Without a national security review, this happened. Now going on to another newspaper, Chinese firm lands government loan guarantee. Washington Associated Press. Costco Lines Incorporated, a subsidiary of China Ocean Shipping Company, is the first shipping company owned by the Beijing government to receive a federal loan guarantee. Clinton twice met with Long Beach officials to push the Costco lease plan. We call it China beachheads on American soil. Now, I don't know if you'll recall, but a former senior defense official, Charlie Freeman, interviewed with the Toronto Sun January 29th of 1996, and this is what was said. Chinese defense officials said they were convinced the U.S. would take no action because American leaders care more about Los Angeles than they do about Taiwan. So now that we sent 4 carrier groups to Taiwan and special forces troops, what does that say for the security of Los Angeles, folks? What's on the agenda for us? While at the same time that was going on, we had Russia involved in our innermost sanctions here in the United States. Cheyenne Mountain, or the complex that controls all of our defense systems here in the United States against a third-party nuclear attack, which is what the Soviets and the U.S. were working on together. Let me show you how that fits together. We have Chinese Navy makes first U.S. visit, 2 destroyers and a supply ship here to the United States. This is a closer picture of the troops involved right here in our own shores. Now we've got the Wall Street Journal back in March 12th of 96 that says this, a sellout to China. The Clinton administration has encouraged American corporations to facilitate the rapid growth of Chinese military power. Dropping down to the bottom paragraph here in the first column. The Commerce Department approved an export license in September of 94. According to government officials, the contents of the factory-filled 280 semi-trailers which were driven to the West Coast whence the stuff was shipped to China. On its face, the sales seemed to be a violation of international agreement among the nuclear supplier groups, which forbids selling 5-axis machinery to any country known to be a nuclear proliferator. China is dubbed a proliferation concern by the U.S. itself. The McDonald case is just one example of the Clinton administration determination to give China most anything it wants. National security be damned. We also have a newsletter. This particular one is April of 97, entitled The Great Red Dragon Invasion via the White House. We also have audio intel tapes that will update you on what the Great Red Dragon is up to. Now, the symbolic value of China in the restaurants, in the parades, etc., has always been the dragon. It's no different today, folks. Now, from a swell old newspaper called The Spotlight that mainstream media continues to rage against, calling them anti-Semitic. When I was there and spoke at the meeting, where at least 1/3 of their financiers are Jewish folks, so I know they're not anti-Semitic. Their statement is, "Resistance to tyrants is obedience to God," by Thomas Jefferson. I'd like to quote from the September 30th issue, 96. A secret base located, or rather is discovered. There is nothing nefarious about the government's intentions. Why hide military activities in the preserve of endangered species? By Mike Blair. Mississippi civilians have discovered a secret military base manned by civilian and U.S. and foreign military personnel deep within the DeSoto National Forest in the southeastern part of the state. I'll skip down to this paragraph here. The base located within a restricted area of the National Forest, posted with signs designating it as an endangered species habitat. Covers a considerable area. Abundant about the base were Russian T-72 main battle tanks, BTR-60 Russian armored personnel carriers, a Scud surface-to-surface missile battery consisting of several individual units and missiles. Going further into the text of the subject, I'd like to share this. Viewing large generators, large communication antennas, mobile homes, a fenced-in razor-wired site, large dirt-moving equipment, military D8 cats or whatever they were with the OD color. But the most curious thing of it all is their operation shut down AT&T. They complained that the operation was blowing out their microwave transmissions. And let me show you what the tower looks like that they'd extended right out of a semi-trailer that, by the way, has some strange camouflage markings to it, not U.S. camouflage, I might add. But this gun device on the top is quite similar to what FEMA is like, and we wonder what they're really all about. Now, this is a FEMA operation that we ended up with pictures from Utah. It says Federal Emergency Management Agency and FEMA on the back of this guy's shirt. Now, out of that semi-trailer came the same basic antenna. This is what the telescoping tower looks like, the semi-trailer here. And the top of it has that same gun on it that the military had in this base behind this endangered species zone. What's going on? What is this piece of equipment being used for? Is it to shut down public communications? It certainly did a good job of that in Mississippi. What's the purpose? And if that's going on behind the fences of endangered species zones in that state, what about our state? What about your state, folks? What else is going on? Now, from the Salt Lake City Tribune Business, Sunday, November 10th of '96, we find this: company stronger than many nations. The global economic power of giant companies have grown to the point that they have become larger than most of the countries where they do business, a new study reveals. Mitsubishi is bigger than Indonesia. Ford is bigger than Turkey. Walmart is bigger than Israel. These companies are the powerhouses of globalization. Skipping to the last paragraph. Overall, the top 200, with 28% of the world's economy, employ barely a third of 1% of the world's workers, the survey says. Now, President Bush has made this statement: out of chaos shall come the New World Order. What chaos? In other words, they have to have chaos to generate the laws to put the global government in. It's no different than Germany was with the Reichstag building being blown up, the Senate building, by these shysters to bring in their new form of government. David Rottenfeller, I call him, David Rockefeller, said this at the Global Grabbers meeting in 1994. We are on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nation will accept the New World Order. What major crisis? Perhaps if I may offer a suggestion here, when the bombs went off in Oklahoma, we were stormed by the media. 360 different media came and hoarded us, more than doubling the population of Little Knox in Montana. And most of them had the same questions in the same order. I'd have to ask, who's the Goebbels of America? The same sheet of music. Now this, they never talk about. This is from Norman, Oklahoma, from their seismic center. Right when the bombs went off, they had 1, 2, 3 seismic printouts, not just one. How come the media never tells you? That was 16 miles away. This is the Omniplex Museum 8 miles away, or half the distance. 1, 2, 3. Why? Why won't the media tell us, folks? What are they trying to hide? We hired an attorney by the name of Senator John DeCamp to get a court injunction to stop the demolition of the evidence. The harder we pushed, the faster that building came down. I'm not saying the government blew up the building, but they sure as the devil destroyed the evidence, hauled it out of town and put armed guards on it. Now what's wrong with that picture? Speaking of pictures, here's another interesting one. This was sent to us anonymously just recently of an encampment, what appears to be a military encampment. There's a Humvee here, here, and here. Now those are expensive vehicles, so I rather doubt that civilians are going to use them, besides their camouflage in color. And all these tents are all camouflage tents. There's 5 They look like about 16 by 32 tents. And this fenced curtain system all the way around it was like 300 by 500 feet with at least a 12-foot wall around it where you cannot see in. But the curious thing is, these Quonsets here, there's also a fenced-in wall around this Ryder truck. This was near Oklahoma City just before the bombs went off. When the aircraft went back to have another look, after the bombs went off, the whole thing was torn down and disappeared. All I have is a question. What's this all about? Why? Now, from the London Associated Press, there is this statement. The United Nations Secretary General Kofi Annan says he had to reassure some members of the United States Congress that they need not fear UN takeover of the United States. Some of them are very concerned that the UN is a threat to U.S. sovereignty. This was in the Missoulian, February 9th of this year. But here's the curious statement, quoting from the new Secretary General. As I said, we don't have the means to take the United States, and even if we did take it, I wasn't sure we could hold it. Now hold it, what does that mean? What does it mean by that? You've got to wonder, the history given the UN, what about the Katanga incident in the early 60s where the United Nations took over the country, forcing the productive, independent, free nation into slavery under communism by attacking them 3 different separate times? Whose tool is the UN? There's a man that's put an article together here that's, I think, very well said. He's a writer for the Conservative Consensus October 1996 issue. He's also written articles for the Boston Herald. He's a nationally syndicated columnist and an author of A Jewish Conservative Look at Pagan America. And who's afraid of the religious right? It says, what do Americans really think of world body? A UN survey I'd love to conduct by Don Frieder. Does America love or hate the UN? The headline since the September 23rd New Yorker, the New York Times story teased. Some surveys may indeed show public esteem for the international fraud. Much depends on how the questions are phrased. Should we help the UN to avert a nuclear holocaust, save the planet, or promote brotherhood and understanding? Well, of course we should. What fun it must be to devise a poll that will elicit exactly the desired response. If the American people were fully aware of the UN's record, ideology, and modus operandi, their reaction would be far from generous. How I'd love to conduct the following survey. Do you think it is fair for the United States to pay 31.7% or $3.5 billion of the UN overall budget, compared to 6.3 of the United Kingdom and 7.6 of France? Is it right that in return for paying almost 1/3 of the freight, the United States gets 1 vote out of 185 in General Assembly? What do you think of an international bureaucracy, 53,744 strong, that lives the lavish life on our alms? Are you troubled by the fact that the UN bureaucrats have salaries 24% higher than their counterparts in Washington, D.C., and pensions 43% higher? I'm troubled by both of them. Former Secretary Boutros Ghali wants the authority to levy direct taxes on Americans. That would be like the head poll tax of the subjects of Great Britain. Not citizens, subjects. This one right here. Is the UN doing a good job of peacekeeping? In the light of the fact that there have been over 80 wars with death toll of 30 million since its founding, how would you rate the UN operations in Cambodia, Somalia, and Rwanda, considering that all those countries are still in turmoil? Given the cost of peacekeeping has risen from 230 million in 88 to 3.6 billion in 94, do we think we're getting our money's worth? Do you approve American soldiers being ordered to serve under UN operations under foreign command without their consent? At its inception, it was envisioned that one day the UN would push coercive population control and abortion, gender sameness, and attacks on parental authority. Are you prepared to acquiesce to the UN Convention on the Rights of Children, which seeks to liberate them from parental authority? No wonder we have chaos in the homes and in the schools today. Now, from the Wall Street Journal again, October 1 of 93, we find this. A Hemisphere in the Balance by David, there's Rottenfeller again. We should together strive to achieve a full Western Hemisphere free trade area by the year 2000, a true new world. What it comes down to is this: the changing in attitude and policies to make this dream come true have happened. Everything is in place after 500 years to build a true new world in the Western Hemisphere. Oh, really? Not if we have a chance at it. Now, this is out of the Missoulian again, 24 February of this year. The billboards or the picketing signs read, GE celebrates 40 years at Hickory by moving jobs to Mexico. Job losses, trade gap, threaten Clinton plan for NAFTA expansion. Washington. The Clinton administration is counting on Chile's president to push Congress toward accepting his country into a reconstructed NAFTA, North American Free Trade. It would be something else then, wouldn't it? As the next step toward creating a Western Hemisphere free trade zone. But the idea's hardest critics aren't on Capitol Hill. The thousands of Americans of jobs have gone to Mexico. Now, speaking of which, there's a videotape out called Vanishing Jobs that you need to get to your congressman to show them what's really happening. It shows the same factories that were here in the USSA that are now in Mexico, where people were getting paid $6, $12, $18 an hour, are getting paid $3.50 to $4 a day. And yet they're bringing them back into America with almost no turfs on them for you and I to buy when we have no jobs. I think those people that take the jobs out of the United States and break their promise on tax breaks, etc., that have given them these positions should not be allowed to come back into the United States. We need to learn to take care of ourselves, folks. Now this project I will show you here is the United States Workforce Plan. It's the cradle to the grave program that the government has for you. A plan to direct what job every person in the U.S. has. This is how school to work will function. National Workforce Development Board, the president appoints 16 members, which include 10 from government and the rest from labor and business. The State Workforce Council does approximately the same thing. The Regional Workforce Development Board, Missouri, for instance, is where this one is from, has 15 of those type of people. Other states may have more or less. But the keys are this. The regional board will produce a blueprint. The job is to identify key industries and jobs in the region, future workforce needs, summarize the capacity of the schools to meet the needs of industry, establish a one-stop career center, compile income data on all workers. I thought they did that already. Incorporate their plan into the state blueprint, cradle to grave. So the whole system of our society will be directed, instead of by you and I, it'll be directed by giant corporations. So you better get involved and help turn this around while there's still a chance, folks. Thank you.
I'm gonna trade my Chrysler for a burro. Buy me a big straw hat. Going to Mexico and sell tacos, 'cause that's where the jobs are at. The sucking sounds are coming just around the bend. It's coming down from Washington, sent by your congressman to take your job down Mexico way. President robbed the treasury, paid Congress behind our backs. Big business got the goodies, the workers got the sack. Bankers got the gold mine, America got the shaft. Industry got slave labor, that's where the money's at. I'm gonna trade my Chrysler for a burro, buy me a big straw hat. Going to Mexico and sell tacos, 'cause that's where the jobs are at. The sucking sounds are coming just around the bend. It's coming down from Washington, sent by your congressman to take your job down Mexico way. They laughed at Pat Buchanan, they insulted Ross Perot. The heroes of us working class will remember the Alamo. Gonna trade my Chrysler for a burro, buy me a big straw hat. Going to Mexico and sell tacos, 'cause that's where the jobs are at. South of the border, y'all come hear me say, hey gringos, 3 tacos for $1. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay.
valued money more than human life. Dollars worth gold and a handshake made things right. The world looked up to us, we owed no one a dime. Americans owned America, and God was on our side. They're taking our freedoms, we can't afford to lose. We vote, but Congress won't listen to me and you. TV news blinds us and we don't hear the truth. America's the cradle of freedom, but don't rock the red, white, and blue.
America's judgment, what lies ahead in the form of biological chemical warfare out of laboratories by design to be used against we the people. Let me prove my point. But first, let me remind you of where we came from at the beginning of this talk in part one. We talked about negative population growth incorporated. How can we put an end to the mass starvation and suffering? There is only one answer: drastic reduction in the numbers of people. No other solution, they say. To drop the U.S. population to 150 million and world population to 2 billion maximum. And according to reports that we've had, like Global 2000 report that James Gustav Speth did for the Carter administration, it's supposed to happen, is supposed to have happened and be all done with by the year 2000. And that's close, so we better get on with it here, folks. Now, the Cobden clubs have even been more sinister about it. U.S. Representative Gebhardt is a part of their club. At least his phone number used to be part of it. And by the way, a professor friend of ours picked this up at their meeting in the state of Iowa that was sponsored by the governor. He got it himself, so we know from whence we speak here. The Cobden clubs talk about the population reduction on a yearly basis by military force when required, and they call it the final solution. I find it extremely sick. Now, at the end of World War II, deals were made with the Japanese war criminals, not that we don't have our own, to trade biological warfare secrets in exchange for forgiveness of so-called war crimes, thus accelerating the American military to the head of the biological race. Unit 731 by Peter Williams and David Wallace. Ishii based his unit in remote northern Manchuria so he could experiment on human beings. There, in what was a police state, he could be given an uninterrupted supply of human guinea pigs. With the unique data gained from human experiments, Ishii believed Japan could outstrip the rest of the world in developing this new weapon of war. No other country would have such accurate details about how epidemics spread and how to protect against them. Only Japan would fully master the twin fields of biological warfare, offensive and defensive. Going down to the bottom paragraph, I'd like to share this. The Cold War politics led American authorities to utilize and cover up their work in occupied Japan. Now, going to U.S. Senate hearings, before the Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research of the Committee of Human Resources. It sounds just like we're a bunch of cattle the way they talk about us. The 95th Congress, first session, examination of serious deficiencies in the Defense Department's efforts to protect the human subjects of drug research, March 8th and May 23rd of 1977. U.S. Government Printing Office, Washington, D.C. Going immediately into the document, we find this: unclassified U.S. Army activity in, I said in, the United States. Biological Warfare Program, Volume 1, February 24th, 1977. Going into the document, we find this, the contents, and we'll start right here with number 1. Biological Warfare Program. Research and planning years after World War II, 1946 to 1949. Expansion of the biological warfare program during the Korean War, 50 to 53. Cold War years, recognition of weapons and defense programs, 1954 to 58. The limited war period, expanded research, development, testing, and operational readiness, 59 to 62. Adoption of the biological program to counter insurgencies, the Vietnam War years. Yeah, right, including Agent Orange, made by DuPont, which is a subsidiary of IG Farben, a corporation in Germany. Now, IG Farben is the corporation that ran the prison camps for Nazi Germany. No doubt what we have to look forward to here. The disarmament and phase down, 68 and 69. The Biological Defense Research Program, 73 to 77. Let's get into this a little ways, and I'll show you what kind of a liar they are here. You know, people were worried about a vial coming in somebody's private parts into this country when dirty Fort Detrick makes it by the ton. I think we have something a little out of proportion here. That's like saying drugs are coming into the United States in somebody's underwear when in fact jumbo jets and boxcars are bringing them in. On page 80 we find this from Dirty Detrick, I call it Fort Detrick. The contractors, the number of contracts, the contract dates, etc. Aerojet General Corporation did 29 experiments for Fort Detrick starting in October of 1956. Aerojet or Aero Projects Incorporated did 9 starting in 1950, etc., etc. This is just one of 20 pages of contracts to Fort Detrick, in addition to Detrick doing its own dirty work and all their other subsidiaries and appendages. Page 124 talks about what they did and how they did it. Anti-personnel with biological stimulants involving public domain. That's our backyard, folks. Anti-personnel with biological stimulants not involving public domain. What does that mean? If it's not public, there's not too many other choices. It still involves either us or our children, doesn't it? Number 4, anti-personnel with pathogenic agents. Pathogenic means disease-causing. Number 5, anti-crop with pathogenic agents including public domain. Is that where Colonel Bunt came from, to short-circuit the food supply? No doubt. I'm just going to cover a couple of these because that's all I'll make reference to later. Bacillus globuli, which means to produce endosporins which attack the cells. It can be pathogenic or disease-causing. Seriae, marcescens, to wither away or become faint or weak, like the Gulf War syndrome, isn't it? And skipping down here, however you say this, Escherichia or E. coli, a bacteria found in the colons of humans and some animals and sprayed on us and our food. How do you like that? So mighty sick people we have out there, isn't there? And this is where they were using these agents. Biological field test, anti-personnel, biological stimulants involving public domain. Location of the test, Washington, D.C. Date, 8 August 1949. And they were just using the 2 agents that we talked about. Seriae marcescens, to cause the withering away or be faint or weak. Bacillus produces endosporins which attack the cells, can be pathogenic or disease-causing. Those are the 2 we'll talk about now. So that was one place in Washington, D.C. starting in 49. The USS Coral Sea and the USS K.D. Bradley at sea off the entrance of Port or Hampton Roads, like Norfolk, Virginia, etc., the big naval base there. It involved the civilians also. San Francisco, California, Port Hueneme, California, Panama City, Florida, in both offshore and between Port Hueneme and Point Mugu, California, near Santa Barbara. Get a load of this. Pennsylvania State Highway number 16, westward for 1 mile from benchmark 193. Right along our highways, in the tunnels, in Pennsylvania Turnpike. You're not off the hook either, sir. Even happened in Hawaii. This is page 1 of many, many pages we've got. This document is 250 pages long. Going a little further, page 248 says this: activities of particular CIA interest. There's that scurrilous group again. I know there's good agents in there, but the bad sure seemingly outweigh the good with their drug running, etc. Through discussions with people associated with the project reflect an overriding interest in incapacitants, particularly in latter years. Available records make it clear that CIA interests included maintaining a stockpile of lethal materials and delivery systems. The evidence indicates that the agency relied upon the use of specific biological warfare agents and toxins being investigated as normal part of the Army's biological warfare program. This was September 15, 1975 when it was released. Now, to prove them a liar right off the bat, I want to share this with you. We have reports of hundreds of Boots or Navy trainees massacred at Farragut, Idaho in World War II. One survivor, a Jesse G. Melrose of Devil's Lake, North Dakota, tells of his entire company being wiped out 2 to 3 hours after going to bed their last night at boot camp. Melrose became deathly ill and barely survived, but says his life was ruined instantly and forever. Reports say 1,700 men died at Farragut, Idaho in World War II. This happened to him October 24th, 1944. He's alive today and still talks to me. Is that sick or what? Appropriations for 1970. Hearing Subcommittee, Committee on Appropriations, House of Representatives, stamped November 24th, 1969. Department of Defense Appropriations, House Bill 15090, Chemical and Biological Warfare. Let me show you what these thieving scoundrel traitors have done to us. Page 129. There are two things about the biological agent field I would like to mention. One is the possibility of technological surprise. Molecular biology is a field that is advancing very rapidly, and eminent biologists believe that within a period of 5 to 10 years it would be possible to produce a synthetic biological agent, an agent that does not naturally exist, and for which no natural immunity could have been acquired. Now, just a little of the conversation between a representative and a doctor. Mr. Sykes, are we doing anything in that field? Dr. MacArthur, we are not. Mr. Sykes, why not? Lack of money or lack of interest? Dr. MacArthur, certainly not lack of interest. And it goes on to say, and I'll quote from way down here, a research program to explore the feasibility of this could be completed in approximately 5 years at a cost of $10 million. Yeah, I'll bet you my bottom dollar it was already done. Now, to show you where this leads, this the little old Habitat program, Habitat 2, creating healthy cities in the 21st century. Let me remind you who's involved in this healthy cities for the 21st century. The WHO organization, the World Health Organization. They are the people that administered the smallpox vaccines to Africa in the 1970s. And for no extra charge, the Africans got HIV positive from these dirty, scurrilous clowns. I'm talking so nice about them, they deserve much worse than that. Murderers on a global genocide scale. Now from 50 USCS, that's the United States Codes, 1520, we find this. The use of human subjects for testing of chemical and biological agents by the Department of Defense. The Secretary of Defense shall supply the Committees and Armed Services of the Senate and the House of Representatives not later than October 1 of each year a full accounting of all experiments and studies conducted by the Department of Defense in the preceding 12-month period, whether directly or under contract, which involves the use of human subjects for the testing of chemical and biological agents. This was June 30th, 1977. When all this other stuff was happening, they still went ahead and did it against you and I. They really care, don't they? Now this we found in a forest. It's like 8 by 10 feet or 10 by 12 feet. It was about a foot thick to start with. And there was many of them scattered out in the forest near water areas, lakes or rivers. The next time we come, it was all cranked up and popped into position. What it appeared to be is a decontamination center in the forest. And it says on the side of it right here, U.S. Army MUST project, Office of the Surgeon General. What does that mean? What's going on in our backyard? Now we've got all across the country, we're finding this, even in our own backyard, presentation, emerging infections, new microbial threats, presented by the Montana State Epidemiologist, Wednesday, January of 1997, public invited, free. Why? What do they know that we don't know? What are they talking about? Now, I don't have the exact date, but this is from early summer of 1996, Gannett News Service, Washington. The Food and Drug Administration soon plans to make finally a temporary ruling that allows the Pentagon to use experimental vaccines and drugs on U.S. troops without their consent. The controversial rule, issued at the Pentagon's request in 1990, before the war with Iraq, was described during a suit against military commanders at the time as treating soldiers as though they were human guinea pigs. How sick. October 1, 1990, Washington, D.C., the Iraq Regional ITF says this, and I'll just paraphrase some of it here for the sake of time. The Iraq biological warfare developments, it talks about Iraq being given and the U.S. knowing exactly what was going on, of these aerosol generators in the spring of 1990 that deliver up to 800 gallons of biological chemical warfare per hour, 2 different types at a time. And our government knew about it in October, yet they sent our troops in there. Then in December of 1990, Operation Desert Shield, Department of Defense, it says Iraq missiles sites 60 Scud missiles with chemical and biological warfare within arm's throw of our troops as they were stationed there. Now these are the warheads or the missiles that were there. It's not written in anything but English. Those are the pictures that came back to us. So obviously the Russians didn't make them. It shows our troops working on them to disarm them without any MOP 4 gear, without any protection at all. They were ordered not to. Let me show you how dirty this gets. Now this is, it says the country, Iraq, Egypt, Department of Defense, but it says it's classified. That's just too bad. The public's going to know. February 9th of 1991. Title, The Disease Epidemic Overwhelming Iraqi Cities. 50 soldiers were killed by their own biological weapons. Well, I'm sorry to say it wasn't their weapons, it was our weapons. Now there's a man in mainstream media that I'd like to pat on the back. He stood taller than any man I know in media. His name is Tom Grant. He and the station he worked for, KREM 2 in Spokane, Washington, have been the only television station in America thus far who had the courage to put the truth out on the Gulf War illness. We thank you for your courage and fair journalism, Tom. Joyce Riley, a registered nurse, a captain with the U.S. Air Force in active reserve right now, caught the desert or the Gulf War syndrome by treating some of the soldiers as she was en route in her aircraft. She sold her little baby grand piano and bought an ad in the Washington Times, November of 1996, that says this, November 3rd of 96. Contrary to what the Pentagon is telling you, there is a deadly Gulf War biological disease ravaging our troops, and it is contagious. Approximately 15,000 Gulf War veterans are already dead, and between 100 and 200,000 troops are sick, disabled, or dying. According to Senate testimony from ex-Senator Donald Regis, February to October 94, Senate reports 103-900 and 103-994. Biological weapons were manufactured, sold, and shipped to Iraq with the full knowledge of the Bush administration, Department of Commerce, and Center of Disease Control. These Gulf War diseases are contagious, and 75% of Gulf War veterans report the disease now spread to their spouses and children. How sick. The disease is a public health hazard spread by blood transfusion, sex, perspiration, I may add coughing. Every sitting senator in 1994 heard this information. This includes ex-Senate Majority Leader Bob Dole, whose wife Elizabeth Dole oversees 50% of the blood transfusions in this country via the American Red Cross. Boy, are we safe in this nation today. Joyce Riley, you can get in touch with her at the Gulf War Veterans Association in Sugar Land, Texas. Gulf War syndrome may be infectious, doctors say. Missoulian, March 9th of 1997. Irvine, California, a number of medical professionals who say they have become ill while treating Persian Gulf War veterans claim the mysterious disease afflicting tens of thousands of soldiers is contagious and could pose a public health threat. Doctors, nurses, and laboratory researchers, as well as others who come in casual contact with the Gulf War veterans, say they have contacted the same symptoms, which are fatigue, fever, aches, rashes, respiratory problems that are generally associated with Gulf War syndrome. Down to the bottom here. Whatever the cause, they say it is spreading. This is also from the Los Angeles Times. But the dirty old Department of Defense, Pentagon, says this. The Gulf War disease. Washington, a massive government study of more than 10,000 veterans of Operation Desert Storm in 91 has found no evidence of any kind of mysterious Gulf War diseases. Isn't that nice of them? If they can't even protect their own soldiers, should we be concerned for the condition of our country? You bet we should. We better be concerned about it right now. Now this is the traitor, one of the top traitors as far as I'm concerned, to do his own troops in. Mr. Schwarzkopf, if I were you, I'd change your children's name because they're not going to want to have your name in the future. When we're done with you, you'll be all done. General Schwarzkopf, testifying before the Senate Veteran Affairs Committee, lying about his own personal troops. One of his personal bodyguards, a man by the name of Kevin Wright, a 27-year-old man, now is suffering and dying from the Gulf War syndrome. He protected this general. He put the general underground, yet he was ordered not to go to MOP 4 to protect himself. He also has a wife and a daughter that are sick. Shame on you, Schwarzkopf. Now the Soviet tanks that we were talking about earlier, this is a picture of a couple of them at a truck stop, Exxon truck stop in Texas. Now those tanks, Soviet tanks and those Soviet trucks are here in America in great numbers, but not to worry, they're targets according to the DOD clone called Soldier of Fortune. This is an old military manual, what it has to say about those vehicles sitting side by side, the tank and the truck. Soviet chemical units operate on the move with combat units, thereby preserving a rapid rate of advance even in chemically contaminated areas. Should we be concerned? And why is this man here in our country? This is Lenin, an 18-foot, 8-ton bronze statue, Lenin in the park in Washington, Seattle, Washington, to be exact. Why? What's going on here? Now, shifting gears just a bit, this is a cover of the Old Catholic Bible, the Goodspeed version, and I would like to share this with you on page 771. That's Ezekiel chapter 14, starting at verse 13. It talks about a famine, which we've talked about tonight, a wild beast, a sword, and the pestilence. Going on to the Jewish Bible, this is the cover of it. Inside of that Bible on page 434, it says exactly the same thing. Ezekiel chapter 14, starting at verse 13. The famine, verse 15, the evil beast, verse 17, a sword, verse 19, the pestilence. Now let me show you from the King James Version of the Protestant Bible, the Thompson Chain reference is the one they're using here. This is what it says on page 773. Ezekiel 38, doggone it, Ezekiel chapter 14, starting at verse 13. It says the same exact thing as the other Bibles. So my suggestion is to you, put away your doggone religious differences and put your nation back together. Look what religion has done to you. We'll break the staff of bread, therefore, and we'll send famine upon it, and we'll cut off man and beast from it. Verse 15, I will cause noisome beasts to pass through the land, that they spoil it, so that it be desolate, and that no man pass through it because of the beast. Verse 17, I will bring a sword upon the land, and say, sword, go through the land, so that it will I will cut off man and beast from it. And verse 19 is the most curious one. I will send pestilence upon the land, and pour out my fury upon it in blood. Where is the desert or the Gulf War syndrome? Where is AIDS? Where are the rest of our diseases? It's in our blood, isn't it? How did they know that way back when? Now, shifting gears to another prophecy, American Indian Magic, Secret Powwow Vows, or Powwows, and Hopi Prophecies by Brad Stagger. On page 176, Sun Bear told me that his bear tribe is jealously putting away stores of food and survival materials in the manner of the Hopi. According to one of the ancient prophecies, he said the great purification will come after the white man has built a house in the sky. We believe that prophecy refers to Skylab. When I asked Sun Bear if there might be anything that the system might do to stave off approaching cleansing of Mother Earth, he shook his head and replied, we know that it has already happened in the spirit world. Soon spirit time will become our time, and it will happen here on earth. There is nothing man can do to stop it. The Earth Mother will shake fleas off her back just as a dog rids itself of parasites. When the cleansing has occurred, good people of spiritual awareness will build a better world. What about all the brothers and sisters who for one reason or another just can't get out of the cities to prepare for the great cleansing? Sun Bear, you are asking for kind words. And all I can say is that the reality is that at some point the cities will not be places where people can survive. The whole structuring of a city is anti-nature. Anti-nature is anti-anything that is real. The Earth Mother is going to cleanse itself. The people are going to have to cleanse themselves by getting rid of past concepts of things and by coming into harmony with the land. It will be important to find people to whom you can relate, a group that can come together and offer harmony. But human beings have to regenerate their mental outlook so that they can come together in complete harmony. And harmony cannot come alone from going up on a mountaintop and doing a bit of contemplating on your navel and thinking all there is to it. That kind of mysticism is selfish because you are only riveting on yourself. There's a man by the name of John Grady, which started an organization called the American Pistol Rifle Association. He's a medical doctor out of Tennessee. He published a book called Washington's Visions and Prophecy for America. He acquired this out of the nation's archives. This is America's history. Washington had 3 visions. The first he had is showing him kneeling at Valley Forge, which was the first vision that he had in the conflict that he was involved in. The second one that he had was the war between the states that put brother against brother. But the third one is the one we're going to talk about tonight. And again I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." At this the dark shadowy angel placed a trumpet to his mouth and blew 3 distinct blasts. Taking water from the ocean, he sprinkled it upon Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then my eyes beheld a fearful scene. From each of these countries arose thick black clouds that were soon joined into one. Throughout this mass there gleamed a dark red light, by which I saw hordes of armed men who moved with the cloud, marched by the land and sailed by sea to America. Our country was enveloped in this volume of cloud, and I saw these vast armies devastate the whole country and burn the villages, towns, and cities that I beheld springing up. As my ears listened to the thundering of the cannon, clashing of the swords, and the shouts and cries of millions in mortal combat, I heard again the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." When the voice had ceased, the dark shadowy angel placed his trumpet once more to his mouth and blew a long and fearful blast. Instantly a light as of 1,000 suns shone down from above me, and pierced and broke into fragments the dark cloud which enveloped America. At the same moment, the angel upon whose head still shone the word Union, and who bore our national flag in one hand and the sword in the other, descended from the heavens, attended by legions of white spirits. These immediately joined the inhabitants of America, who I perceive were well nigh overcome, but who immediately taking courage again, closed up their broken ranks and renewed the battle. Again, amid the fearful noise of the conflict, I heard the mysterious voice saying, "Son of the Republic, look and learn." As the voice ceased, the shadowy angel, for the last time, dipped water from the ocean and sprinkled it upon America. Instantly the dark cloud rolled back, together with the armies it had brought, leaving the inhabitants of the land victorious. Then once more I heard the villages, towns, and cities springing up where I had seen them before, while the bright angel, planting the azure standard he had brought in the midst of them, cried with a loud voice, "While the stars remain and the heavens send down dew upon the earth, so long shall the Union last." And taking from his bow the crown on which blazed the word Union, he placed it upon the standard while the people knelt down and said, "Amen, amen." Thank you.
In the shadow of the government, there were names upon the wall. Heroes who paid the price without knowing what they bought. In a death-infested jungle, they proudly gave their all, while the Council of Foreign Relations wrote our country's law. Will you stand up with the patriots? Can you hear this country's call? The UN's New World Order has shackles for us all. If you love wealth more than freedom and lack the courage for liberty, crouch down and lick the hands that feed you. Let a patriot stand with me. Traitors to the Constitution, vermin low enough to crawl. In the shadow of our government, put those names upon the wall. Can't you hear her cry for freedom? Liberty's backed against the wall. Uncle Sam has ignored her.